welcome everybody joining. Just getting set up here. So just bear with us a moment. Welcome everybody. We'll get started shortly. Can I just check that you're seeing my screen, Nikita or Ali, would you? Yeah, brilliant. Yep. Okay, we'll give it a minute or two. So welcome. We've just been discussing the weather, anyone who's in Ireland or Dublin in particular, the miserable weather. And Ali has noticed that even though the weather it's always bad, we still never ceases to be topic of conversation.
That's what I hear from across the pond anyway.
Yeah. So
you guys typically have sour weather.
Yeah, but it's still, we never plan for it. It's still, we're ever the optimist.
Always optimistic, eternally optimistic.
This is it. So welcome everybody. Say hi in the chat if you're joining. So there's no audio for attendees, but feel free to drop us a note in the chat and say hi and let us know where you're from. I don't know if we'll have some international joiners and we'll get started in just a moment. I'm going to let a few more join. And I'm going to double check that I'm recording because that can be something that falls off the radar once we get going. So just give us a moment and I'll do an intro now in a moment, but just there's a chat and a Q&A. So if you've got specific questions, you can drop those in the Q&A. Otherwise, there's a chat there and we're getting a few more. So welcome for anyone just joining. We're just giving it a moment before we kick off. And say hi in the chat if you feel like it. Yeah, we're recording this event as well, just in case anybody does have to drop off. I might just give it one more minute and then we'll get going. Okay, so welcome everybody. Hopefully we might get a few more joining as we go on, but we'll get started anyway. For those of you who are here, welcome. This is our Data Plus Women Ireland event and the topic is visualizing data. So I'm just going to do an intro and then we'll kick off with our speakers. So I have pressed record. That's just to make sure that I have not neglected that. So the topic, as I said, is visualizing data. So we're joined by two speakers, Alli Torban and Nikita Parab. So both two topics or two talks based around the theme of visualizing data, something that I'm personally very passionate about. So I'm really looking forward to both of the speakers. So I'll do a bit of an introduction, about 5 minutes. And then we're going to hear first of all from Alli Torban, and her talk is what to consider to make your graphics more engaging. And then she'll be followed by Nikita Parab, and Nikita will talk about the power of color in visualizations. And then we'll have a Q&A. So as I said, there's a Q&A section there on Zoom, so you can drop questions in there, or you can just use the chat if you want to say where you're from and say hi, just to make it a bit more interactive. Because there is no audio for attendees, but you can use the chat, and please feel free to do so. So just in terms of an introduction, I just wanted to give a brief background of Data Plus Women for anybody who's not familiar with the initiative. So I'm going to just go over, I've taken the Data Plus Women mission from the website, and I'm going to drop a few links into the chat a little bit later, just in case anyone wants to read up on the background. But essentially, Data Plus Women provides a platform for all data and analytics enthusiasts to learn new skills, share experiences, and broaden their networks while elevating women working in data. So it's open, well, everybody's welcome. And yeah, so the idea is just to, I suppose it was set up in 2014 at a Tableau conference. So that's where Tableau's involvement comes from. And so they essentially sponsor and kind of facilitate, supply the platform, but the content and, it's kind of separate from Tableau from that perspective, but apart from the fact that kind of they sponsor it. So the idea is to share stories, make connections, and recognize amazing women and allies who elevate them in the data community. So as I said, I'll share those links from Tableau. So that's kind of the bigger picture. And then there's Data Plus Women Ireland, So there are a few chapters across the world. These are just some of the examples in Europe and Data Plus Women Ireland. So I'm Louise Shorten, I work for the Information Lab, and then the co-organisers of Data Plus Women Ireland are Katie Kilroy, who works for Arlo Technologies, and Michelle Gork, who works for United Health Group. So the Data Plus Women Ireland kind of started in 2018. We've had a few in-person events, and then we've kind of moved over to the virtual platform, which allows us to kind of widen the net and have international speakers. So our plan is to have quarterly events, have one person based in Ireland and one person who's international. And that's just a little bit of the background. And then in terms of future, well, I suppose in terms of past sessions, some of the topics have been, the last one was on career talks. Then we've had things like how to build data communities, digital transformation. So just very varied topics. So if you have any suggestions, feel free to reach out. If you want to suggest a speaker, or if you want to nominate yourself as a speaker, I'd love to hear from you. You can contact me on Twitter or LinkedIn. So questions and answers at the end. If anyone also would like to share any job opportunities, feel free to drop links in the chat. So I'm just going to move now onto our speakers. So Alli Torban is an independent information designer based in Washington, DC. And with that, I'll hand over to you, Alli.
Hi, everyone. I'll go ahead and share my screen. So nice to be here. Louise, does that look good?
Yeah.
Yes, good, thanks. All right. So today I'm going to talk about what to consider to make your graphics more engaging. And like Louise said, I'm Alli Torban, information design consultant. I'm independent, so I work on any projects that I want, and I help researchers get their work seen and understood. I'm also the host of the podcast Data Viz Today and based in Washington, DC. And I work on a wide variety of projects for my clients. So I have traditional data visualizations, maps, and infographics. The two on the right were commissions from the news outlet Axios, and also illustrations and explainers and comics even. So the work that I've done kind of ranges, it has a wide variety of ways to engage audiences. And when I'm working with a client, sometimes they know exactly what they want, but a lot of times we're trying to decide together kind of what kind of graphics will engage their readers. And is it going to be one of the traditional data visualizations? Are we going to need an infographic? Maybe just an illustration or a diagram. And that's part of my consultation process, is figuring out what's the most engaging method for their readers. And I focus on engagement because we create data visualizations to have some sort of impact. And I like to think about impact as we're connecting the reader to new information, to people, an idea, a place, or wonder. And I think about our graphics as the thing that's forming those connections, because we don't really have control over like forcing someone to retweet a graphic or to take action on it. Really, all we can do is create the graphic and form that connection between the reader and the information. But the thing is, we can't just create the graphic and have the impact and automatically connect the reader to new information. We need the reader to be able to see the graphic and commit to decoding it and understanding it. We need to get their eyes on it. We need them to engage with it. So it's a super important middle step that we can't skip in order to ensure our graphics have the impact that we want them to have. And when I say engaging, does that mean that the graphic is eye-catching? Or do we need to create the graphic to make sure it's really clear? It's kind of hard to tell because, it's different in every situation, right? It depends. And that's the part that I was struggling with when I first came into the data visualization field. And especially when I started working with clients on my own, like when they need to engage their reader, what kind of questions should I be asking? What should I consider in order to make it engaging to their specific reader in their specific situation? So that's why I developed this mental model that I'm going to share my mental model with you today. And this is what guides my design decisions and my decision-making process when I'm creating graphics with my clients, so I can make it as engaging as possible for their specific reader. But first, before I share the mental model, I want to go back and share with you how I even discovered this mental model. So I was reading this book. My mom gave me this book she got from the library on the environmental effects on Parkinson's disease symptoms. And she showed me this, she bookmarked this one chapter, and I came across this graphic in the book. And I, as a chart maker, I was really excited. And I asked her if she read it, and she said no. I asked her why, and she said, "Oh, it just kind of looked overwhelming." And she skipped over it and just read the text. And I was surprised. Well, I mean, if you look at it, you can see why it's not that engaging, but I was kind of surprised because my mom is a high school math teacher. So we can't say like, oh, she's chart phobic or data phobic or anything like that. She teaches this stuff for a living. So if she's very data literate, she is interested in this topic and focused on consuming this chapter, but this graphic still failed to engage her. How is that even possible? Like, it kind of just blew my mind. How was this chart so bad that it was just like her eyes just closed, like, do not engage, So I forced myself to engage with this graphic and break it down and try to do a redesign of this chart to see, okay, what is it missing? What would I need to do to make it engaging in this particular scenario? So I broke down this chart. And so we have time on the x-axis. This is someone's age going up from birth to 100 years. And the y-axis is the number of dopamine producing neurons in someone's body. And then they have this threshold line that shows when you would see the appearance of symptoms of Parkinson's disease. And so that's the setup. And then inside the chart, we have these 4 lines that show 4 different scenarios. So we have normal aging, and the idea being over time, if you live long enough, you're eventually going to show symptoms of Parkinson's disease, which is actually pretty interesting. And then if you have an intermittent toxin exposure, kind of goes down like this, single toxin exposure. And then if you have a toxin exposure in utero. So it's actually a really interesting chart, and, connects me to new information very successfully. So I was trying to think, how would I redesign this chart to make it more engaging for someone reading this book? And this is what I came up with. And it's pretty simple redesign. All I did was make black the main color for the one line, gray for everything else. And then the text on the side, the number of dopamine producing neurons, I made it a horizontal rather than vertical. And then I made different line thicknesses to show hierarchy. So your eyes immediately go to that normal aging, and then it starts working its way around into the other parts of the chart. And when you look at them side by side, like, you can tell which one do you want to read and which one kind of scares you away, right? And what I would do is I would just make small multiples of this one chart and just have the four of these charts gridded on one page of the book. And you could easily see the trend for each different case. And it's very engaging this way. But so what? I was able to do, like a very typical data viz redesign, make something complex, more simple, add some visual hierarchy, and that's great. It's more engaging for this particular case. But how does that help me in future cases? Maybe making it clear and, just focusing on visual hierarchy and making a small multiples. Is that going to help me in the future? Not necessarily. I mean, probably for a lot of cases, but not for other ones. How can I extend this to make engaging visuals for different audiences? That's what I was thinking. But then I thought about something I thought about when I first saw this graphic. We were highly interested in the subject, and we were focused on consuming the content. And in that case, making it more clear was the way to engage the audience. So that got me thinking, well, what if I have an audience who's not interested in focused, or interested and distracted or disinterested and distracted. And thought, oh, this is like a quadrant chart. So we have these kind of 4 general pots of types of readers, and they're different levels of interest and attention at different times when they see a graphic. So that's what I want to talk to you today. I want to share this mental model with you that I have, that this quadrant chart that shows different ways to engage different types of readers in these quadrants. So I'll give you an example of each type of reader in each quadrant, and also show you different ways that you can engage the specific type of reader. So closer look at these axes, we have low interest to high interest in a particular subject. And, low interest can be like, not that someone's specifically disinterested in your subject, but maybe it's not currently on their radar to be interested in it. And then focused and distracted. So different states of focusedness of someone when they come in contact with your graphic. So you have to think about that moment, that specific moment that someone is going to come in contact with your graphic. Are they going to be likely to be focused, or are they likely to be distracted? So here, this is our full quadrant chart. So let's jump first to the upper right-hand quadrant, focused and high interest. An example of this audience is a person researching a topic that they're interested in. And to engage this person, we're going to reduce friction, focus on clarity and visual hierarchy, just like this example that I just showed you. This type of engagement, this type of chart is in this quadrant, and to engage this type of audience, someone who's sitting down, focused, ready to engage with your content, you don't need to add anything else. What you need to do is make sure that they can get the information they need quickly with as little friction as possible. And a really great resource to learning how to do this, Storytelling with Data. I'm sure you've heard of them. If not, go to storytellingdata.com. They have a lot of really great top blog posts, books. Cole Nussbaumer-Knaflic has quite a few books out, all about thinking about more of this business context of being really redesigning your charts to be really clear, and focusing on visual hierarchy and reducing friction between your reader and your graphic. So let's jump down now to distracted and high interest. And I see this as like the busy CEO reading a report or in a presentation, excuse me. And they're obviously very interested in like the topic of their business, right? But they're thinking about 1,000 different things. They're a little distracted. And the best way to engage this kind of audience is really focus your chart on the what's in it for me. And a lot of times you'll use a lot of the same concepts as in the quadrant we just looked at, but you really have to focus on what's going to alert this person to a particular problem or a success. Like how can they be incentivized to pay attention to your graphic? And I want to show you an example, my podcast download chart. So every time I log into my podcasting host, which is where, I upload my MP3 and then they distribute it to the different podcast hosting platforms, they have this download chart that just shows downloads per day. And then they have time on the x-axis and the number of downloads on the y-axis. And, I'm sort of interesting, but like all it's really showing is, hey, this is when new episodes were released. So you got like extra downloads. And then, but this is just showing every single episode kind of just aggregated all in one line. So really, this could have been a new episode, or this could have been where someone binged the archive, right? So this chart doesn't really show me that much. So honestly, I'd never even look at it. So I was thinking, okay, so if I'm going to redesign this chart and focus on the what's in it for me, I want to think about what information would alert me to some sort of problem or some kind of success. And this is probably something that you're thinking about too when you're designing dashboards. You really want to focus on what's going to alert me to a problem or success. Like you might need to, it might be helpful for the analyst to be like keeping track of certain information, But really, when you're thinking about the executive dashboard, you want to alert them to something that's going to get their attention. Like, what's going to make me pick up the phone and call my boss? Like, that's the thing that I need to highlight. I need to kind of redesign the chart in order to focus on the what's in it for me, what's going to help me do my job better. So this is how I would redesign that chart. At the bottom, I have days since launch. And then each line is its own podcast episode. And I still have number of downloads on the y-axis. And really what this is showing is an apples to apples comparison of how each episode is performing. So I can quickly see, oh, wow, episode 61 on launch day did a lot better than episode 60. And then I can think, well, I know that episode whatever is my all-time best performing episode. How did episode 61 compare to that one? And then I can like change these drop downs, and I'm engaging with this chart, and it's giving me information that I can take an action on. So like, okay, this episode did like 53% better than this other episode. What was it about this episode that was so much more intriguing to my listeners? Maybe someone shared it to a big audience. Like, this gives me something to work with. So when you see this kind of chart, what's in it for me? I don't know. It's just, it's hard for me to tell. It's not hitting me over the head. I have to have my own reasons to engage with this chart. This chart gives me something to hold on to engage with. So when you have someone who has high interest in the subject, but they're distracted, you can't just hope that they're going to find the reason they should be interested in the data. You have to make sure you're kind of focusing the chart to give them a reason to engage with it. And you can ask those questions like, what would make me pick up the phone and call my boss? That kind of question is going to help you change your perspective on the chart to make it as interesting and engaging for your reader as possible, because you really have to hook them in this case. So now let's jump diagonal to the low interest and focused. And I like to think about this as the hobbyist reading National Geographic or Scientific American. You're just kind of flipping through the pages. You're maybe not interested in every single subject, right? But you're focused in consuming the content. And what's going to stop a person from flipping the page? What's going to make them stop and look at a particular article and read it? And I was researching this. Okay, what would engage this kind of reader? And I came across this talk from Jen Christensen, and the talk was about illustrating science for a non-specialist audience. And she was talking about, in her experience, when she's the editor for the graphics for Scientific American, this was an example that she showed. And the top graphic is actually the most scientifically accurate for the topic they were talking about. But she actually art directed the bottom graphic because she has found when you have a topic that is very complex for non-specialist audiences, it's really important to have a welcoming gesture, she says. And the welcoming gesture is adding like fanciful details and extra visual components or storytelling. And that's what helps engage your reader and get them interested in your particular topic. So to engage this kind of reader, think about the welcoming gesture. I just love that the way she puts that. And you can do that with beauty, story, illustrations. Another beautiful example is from National Geographic. Mesa Schumacher, Manuel Canales, and Taylor Magiacomo made this beautiful spread about snow leopards. I'm not particularly interested in snow leopards, but when you see this graphic, it's just amazingly beautiful. There's lots of wonderful movement in the illustration of the snow leopard, but that's the part that pulls you in. That's the welcoming gesture, the beauty of this animal, and the skill of the illustration. But if you look closer, you actually have all these different charts and beautiful elements here supporting that and giving you the information more about the snow leopard. So you can learn a lot about it. And the fact that they added this welcoming gesture pulls you in and makes you want to engage with it. So for this focused, low interest reader, think about what kind of welcoming gesture that you can add. It can be beauty, story, illustration. Now let's jump down to low interest and distracted. And, this is a lot of us every day. Anyone scrolling through Twitter, you're not particularly looking for anything in particular and you're distracted. So how would you get someone's attention and get someone to engage with your graphic here? And I think this is pretty intuitive for all of us. You got to be eye-catching, and you can do that with color, animation, novelty. And an example of this, we all remember the bar chart races. They were definitely a craze, and they do a good job of catching your attention on Twitter. But I actually did see somebody put about 10 bar chart races in a budget report. It was an online budget report, and you were like scrolling through and you had to sit through all these bar chart races and wait, I don't know, probably 10 seconds before it got to the end to see the end result. And it was awful because it was for the wrong reader. I was a interested and focused person, and I was having to sit through this, engaging, trendy bar chart race. And it was the wrong match. So for the person scrolling through Twitter, something like this makes sense. For the person looking through a budget report, it doesn't make sense. And that's why we have these different readers in these different quadrants. Another one is a graphic that I created for Viz for Social Good. I did this tessellated unit chart because Viz for Social Good, they were running a would you call it a competition? Not a competition, but a project where they were visualizing their own data about the different projects that they have done over the years, the different nonprofits that they've helped. And part of their mission is to just get awareness and engagement for Viz for Social Good and get people to participate in future projects. So I thought this would actually be a really great time to try something novel and eye-catching. And it was eye-catching. The person who actually won that round of Viz for Social Good, Sam Parsons, he wrote in his blog post about his winning entry, he said, "This Viz immediately caught my eye," and it got him to participate in this challenge. And this was his amazing award-winning entry. So I would like to take a small amount of credit for getting him to engage with my graphic, which caused him to create this amazing graphic. So that's impact for you. So for this low interest distracted reader, think about, anybody scrolling through Twitter, you really do have to lean into the eye-catching color animation thing. So that is the quadrant chart. This is what I'm thinking about. And I actually show this to my clients, and we talk through this, like where's your reader going to be? And we talk about different ways that we can engage their reader depending on where they fall. So I'd like to point out that it's totally okay for you to have a reader in one particular quadrant, and some of your audience is actually in a different quadrant. And it's oftentimes I will recreate the same chart, but for different audiences. So like, this is a graphic I created for one of my clients. He's a real estate agent, and he is trying to give information to people who are in this focused high interest quadrant. So people currently looking for houses in this city. So you want to just, reduce friction, tell them what they need to know about the market. But he's also trying to get people low interest distracted, like pull people in, so stay top of mind. So when they're actually looking for a real estate agent, they think about him. So I actually redesigned the same chart, but created something he could put on social media. So it's the same data, but I have something that's a little bit easier to grasp. You're just seeing the median kind of move up over time, and it's animated. So it's kind of interesting to see what's happening with the median closing price over time for the past, what is that, eight years that thing is showing it. So it's totally okay to create a chart for one particular audience and redesign it for another. And it's actually usually the best case. Another example, like let's say you have your company dashboard, right? And it's probably in this, either in the focused high interest, or maybe high interest, distracted, depending on if you're talking about like an executive or an analyst. But let's say you want to redesign your company dashboard, and you tell your boss and you say, I want to make it more engaging. And they're like, oh my gosh, no, they're going to like go crazy with the bar chart races because engaging means eye catching. And this would be a great time to show them the quadrant chart and explain, I know that the bar chart race is something that goes here. I want to stay in this quadrant and think about questions like what information would alert me to a problem or success, and redesign the dashboard to make it more engaging in this way. In my last example, I create graphics and articles for dataliteracy.com, and they are typically kind of in this side of the quadrant chart. And they have people who are kind of like maybe low interest in data literacy, but they might be sort of interested in it and like willing to engage a little bit. So when I'm creating graphics, I'm really trying to focus on giving them that nice welcoming gesture, catching their eye. So I wrote an article about the difference between incidence and prevalence, which is really important nowadays when we're trying to understand diseases and how they affect populations. But that's not really that interesting of a topic. But I created this graphic and I cleaned it up, and I was thinking, it feels like it's missing something, because it does look nice, but it still kind of looks like something you would see in like a textbook. And I thought, well, I do need to add more of a welcoming gesture here, because I'm trying to pull these people in. I'm trying to catch their eye. So I did some more research on different illustration methods that would make something a little more eye-catching. And I came up with this like isometric view of the exact same thing. But you got these cute little balls on this like table looking thing. And it's a little bit more novel and unique and kind of pulls people in a little bit more. So in closing, we create data visualizations to have an impact. So just to remember to think about engagement too, and focus on meeting your reader at their current state of interest and attention, and you'll be more likely to engage them. And if you'd like a copy of this, of the quadrant, you can go to allitorban.com/talk. And I would love to answer any questions you have after Nikita gives her talk. I'll stick around till the end, and you can always drop questions in the chat, and I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you. Oh, we can't hear you, Louise.
Louise, you're on mute, I think.
It doesn't look muted, but couldn't hear you.
With the headphones on.
Yeah, thanks. Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Thanks. Sorry about that. Okay, so I was just saying I shared Alli's website in the chat, and also your podcast, her podcast, Data Viz Today, and Storytelling with Data, who you mentioned. So that was really interesting.
Yes,
Thanks so much for that. I hadn't seen your model previously.
Okay.
And yeah, it really, it was fantastic. So if people have questions, drop them into the Q&A, as Ali said, and we'll pick them up then once Nikita has concluded her talk. So I'll pass over to you, Nikita. Thanks.
Thank you. Let me just confirm that you are able to see my screen. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Hi, guys. So I am Nikita. I work for the Information Lab Ireland. And today I'm just going to present a short slide on why to use color and what are the best practices of using pre-attentive attributes in your visualizations. So to start with, what are pre-attentive attributes? So pre-attentive attributes are something that draws your attention to the visualization. Your eye is naturally drawn towards it. So one of them is, for example, length. So in this one, you can see that one of the bars is taller than the others, and your eye naturally, or your brain just goes, okay, that one is tall. And then you look at everything else. The next one is width. Again, one of the bars is a bit wider than everything else. So your brain, again, just looks at that and, okay, that's the first thing that you notice in that box. Orientation is another one where you first see the horizontal bar and then see the vertical lines. Then there is the size, shape, enclosure, position, grouping, color hue, and color intensity. So in all these charts, you'll see that the ones, for example, if you look at the enclosure ones, we can see that the ones that are in the box are the ones that you look at first, and then everything else. So today we are mostly just going to talk about color hue and color intensity. So I'm just going to mostly focus on why to use color, and then what are the best practices or how to what are the best practices to use color. So just a quick exercise before we start. So can you, in your mind, count how many 5s you see in this box, text box right here? I'll pause for like 10-20 seconds and give you some time to count that. Okay. Now, can you tell me how many, was your answer correct or wrong? Just in your mind, were you close enough? Were you far enough? Because what I wanted to show here is just by highlighting the 5s in a different color, that comes out and you can see that immediately, instead of in the previous slide where you couldn't see the 5s immediately. You have to look at all the numbers and actually go and count each one of them. In this one, you can just see, okay, I can see that there are 6 5s and it's all right. So that is just one of the use cases of how much color can be impactful in your visualizations. So the different uses of color, one of the first ones are to add emphasis to your dashboard. So this is a simple chart where I have different countries and the profit of different countries. So suppose I just want to show the user the countries that are not doing that good, and I want to draw the user's attention to those countries first. I can simply use a color chart and make that a bit brighter so that that's the one that's highlighted in the chart. So you can use colors to add emphasis to your dashboards or to your charts. The next one is a simple, again, it's another use case of adding emphasis to your data. So in here, you can see it's like a simple table with the different subcategories, the years and the sales throughout the years. And nothing really pops out. I don't know where to look. I don't know what to focus on, what numbers to focus on. But if I just use a bit of color, I can see that the numbers that are higher are the darker ones, and the ones that are lower are lighter ones. In this case, I'm actually highlighting the ones that are doing good. So in here, you can see that copiers are doing really great in 2018 and so on. You can also use color to highlight something. So for example, this is the kind of text that you have at the top of your chart. United Kingdom is the most profitable country. Now, this is fine, but if I just add a bit of color, so for example, United Kingdom is in blue, and then is the most profitable country is in black. You can see United Kingdom is really highlighted compared to the rest of the text. So this is another use case of highlighting something using color. Now, similar to the previous chart, this is like the sales and the sales rep, and we have different we have targets for each of the sales rep, and then you can see which sales have gone over, or which sales rep has gone over or under the budget. We can see the lines. The chart is pretty readable. It's all good. But if we just use a little bit of color here again, we can immediately see the difference. So the ones that are going under are highlighted in red, and the ones that are over are highlighted in gray, and we can see that immediately. And I've also used color as a legend. So at the top, if you see the title of the chart, were sales under or over budget, the under and over words are using the same color as the chart. So that's another cool way of just using the text as a color legend as well, without having a separate color legend altogether. You can also use color to add another layer of data. So in here, you can see that it is a simple pie chart with the 3 categories of data. And then you have different colors for different categories. This is not really telling me anything, except that all the different categories are doing almost similar in terms of sales. But if I add another layer of data, which is profit, and use that as my color, I can see that furniture, even though it is almost doing equal to say technology and office supplies, it is not doing that good in terms of profit. So this adds another layer of data and gives more insight on your dashboard. You can mix two of the use cases. So you can use color to highlight and add another layer of data. So in here, I have a chart with sales by categories and subcategories. And you can see that I have everything in blue. I can see that it is being sorted out and I can see different things here. But suppose I also want to add profit in here and keep the chart the same. So I can do that and add profit. So in here, now you can see that even the tables is doing good in terms of sales, the profit isn't that good. That's adding new data to your existing chart without making a separate chart altogether. The most important thing while using colors is, or highlighting something using colors, is that you need to highlight something in the data and not everything. So in here, I have used sales by categories, and you can see that I have used different colors for different subcategories. So what my brain does here is, if we check the arts and binders right here, there are two shades of oranges. So I find some kind of association between them when there isn't. If, for example, even here, appliances and accessories have different shades of blue, my mind just goes that, okay, maybe there is some link between them. And this is just using different shades of different color. I read somewhere online that Tableau recommends using 7 colors at the most, 7 different colors at the most, because there aren't so many unique colors. And then after that, it'll just keep using different shades of the same colors that you have. Another quick tip is using same colors for same measures. So for example, in here we have the European sales, and we have sales by subcategories and sales by countries. Now I have 2 different colors for both the charts. So I don't find any association between the two. But if we go to the next slide, you'll see that those two different charts have an association now, because I've used the same color for sales. So it's really important to keep that in mind when using a measure. Try to stick to the same color, or at least the same shades of color, so that there is some kind of association. Moving on to the next topic, the green and red. So we all use green, and I'm sure that everyone has used at some point of time green and red to show positives and negatives in your chart. So suppose this is like a simple chart. This is a Superstore dashboard actually that we have in Tableau. So I've just used that and changed the colors to red and green. You can see that everything is bright, everything is nice. I can see the profit ratio doing bad in red, doing good in green, etc. The next dashboard as well, I can see that everything is fine, bright and nice. But suppose you have color blindness. So I can see that we have 21 participants here, and color blindness affects 1 in 12 men and 1 in 200 women. I'm sure that maybe someone amongst us is not seeing this picture as colorful as it is, but maybe something of this sort. This is the peak red, or this is called protonomy, sorry, color blindness. So in this one, you can see the shades of red, but they're not as strong. So the shade of red is a bit lighter or dull. The next one is protonopia. In this one, you don't see the color red at all. So all you see is green and yellow, or mixtures of green and yellow. And that's the reason you can see the peppers there, which were bright red, are all green in this one. So it's really important to remember when you are building a dashboard that the colors you are using are accessible to all. And even though it looks good, it is sometimes good to check in the background if they're accessible to all, and if we can reach most of the audience that we are trying to reach using the dashboard. So for the dashboard that we had built and for the colors that we had used, I used a color blindness simulator just to show how the colors would look like. So this is how the shades would, and yeah, there are more than 2 types of color blindness. There are actually 8. And depending on what you have, you will see the shades of green in different types. So yeah, and same for the shades of red as well. You'll see it in different shades of green or even different shades of red depending on what type of color blindness you have. So the same chart, suppose we are looking at due to anomaly, which is the type of color blindness. Suppose someone has due to anomaly. This is how the red and green colors would look like. And this is how the same Superstore dashboard would look like to them. So in here, you can see, I can still see the difference between red and green, and it's not that bad. But if I go to the next dashboard, you can see that as the color goes lighter, especially here, red and green almost looks the same to me. And even for this one, like as the color goes lighter, I can't really tell the difference between the 2 shades. For the next one, I have used protanopia, which is the color blindness where you cannot see the color red. So in this one, it looks like it doesn't really tell anything because you can't really see the difference between red and green. To me, it looks like, okay, that means that the darker countries are doing good and the lighter countries are doing bad. And in the trend chart, I can't really see anything. I can hardly see the difference between the 2 colors. Even in the second dashboard, it's still all different shades of gray and or green. So what I would recommend is using colors that are visible to all, accessible to all. This is just for the use case. This is just to highlight the point that your dashboard should be visible or accessible to most of the people that you are trying to reach out to. So switching to a simple orange and blue color would make a huge difference. It is a default color in Tableau, and you can easily switch to the orange and green. It's not a different color or anything like that. It's simple. Yeah, it's a simple bar. It's a simple switch. So suppose this is the dashboard that I edited again and used the orange and blue, and this is what it would look like for people who do not have color blindness. So this is the first dashboard. This is the second dashboard. And this is how the colors blue would look like for people who have color blindness. So now here you can see a difference where the colors are a bit on a purple scale or even on a different shade of blue scale. And if I move to the next color, which is orange or like a rust orange, you can see that they are the shades of green and brown. So they are 2 different colors, even though you have color blindness. They're like purple and green and blue and brown. So if I just move on to the next slide and show you how it would look like for due to anomaly, in here you can see that it would look like shades of brown and blue, which is still much better than the green and red, because here I can actually see the differences between the 2 colors. If we move on to the next dashboard as well, I can still see the differences. Even though the colors are going lighter, I can still make out if it's an orange or a blue. If we move on to the next dashboard, which is protanopia, where you cannot see the color red, in here you can see again that it's a shade of green and purple. So it's still 2 different colors, and you can still make out the difference. Even in the next dashboard here, you can see that there are different shades of green and purple. Even though the color goes lighter, you can still see the difference. But what to do if your client is kind of telling you that you have to use red and green, because that is what we have been using and that is what everyone is used to seeing. You can still play around with the shades of red and green. So here I have just tried out a different shade of red and green, which is maybe a lighter green and a darker red, so that at least the shades can make out the difference between the 2 colors. So I've used like a very light shade of green and a very bright shade of red here. So this is how the dashboard looks like for people who do not have color blindness. If I move to the next slide here, which is the second dashboard. And this is how the color would look like. So this is how the color green would look like for someone who has color blindness, and depending on the type of color blindness. So it is again a shade of purple or like a teal color. And the next one is the color red, which is shade of green and rust color. And this is how the dashboard would look like for someone who has due anomaly, which is weak red. So in here, even though it's a different shade of green and red, you can still make out the difference between the two colors, and it is still visible. Even for the next dashboard here, you can see, even though the color is going a bit lighter, you can still make out the difference between the two colors, which is great. If I move on to the next one, which is protanopia, it is very similar to the red and green protanopia, but in here you can still see the difference because we have used a bright red. So it's a bit better. I wouldn't say it is totally better, but it is still better than the previous red and greens. And yeah, so this is the second dashboard, and this is how it would look like as well. And yeah, so I have used the resources that I used for this one. I've used the Cooler's website for the color blindness simulator. So if you enter your hex code there, it will show you the color blindness simulator, and you can see how it looks like for everyone on the color blindness scale. Then you also have a color blindness simulator here, wherein you can upload an image and actually see how that looks for everyone. So maybe you can upload a screenshot of your dashboard and see how it looks for everyone. The other interesting thing that I saw was the 100 color palettes. So this is a Tableau dashboard that has like different types of color palettes that you can use and select. Again, before you use it, just try and see if it works out. Yeah, I think I stopped sharing my screen because I closed the window there and I did not realize that. So.
No problem. That was great, Nikita. Thanks a million. Brilliant. So just a quick update. So the chat hasn't been working, so it's been disabled, but the Q&A is there if people want to drop in questions. So we can have, so we can take any questions if there are. Yeah, I found that, I liked the way that kind of, Nikita, you kind of picked up, Alli, we could see the mention, or, how you were using color in your visualizations, and then just the different approaches you can take, which I found interesting. I'm going to jump in with a couple of questions to start with. Just first one to Nikita, because as you just finished there, did you find, so I've linked those, so the materials, the colorblind simulators, I've linked 2 of them in the chat. So my understanding is that you can still see what I posted in the chat, but you just can't reply. Did you find them user-friendly? Did you find the process easy?
Of using the color blindness simulators? Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's very user-friendly, and it's actually I was a bit taken aback to see how much of a difference it makes, because before doing this talk, I did not know much about color blindness. So it was a good exercise for me as well, because I got to know that there are not only I thought color blindness was just like you see black and white, or else you see colors. But I got to know that no, there are different types. And the websites, there are so many resources to actually try out. There are also extensions that you can download, and it makes your whole screen colorblind friendly. So you can also try that out. If you just Google like color blindness simulator, there are so many options to try out. The ones I tried out are the ones that I put in the resources there.
Thanks. Yeah, I had used Color Oracle previously, and it was okay to use, and they kind of 3 of the types of color blindness. I mean, it is complex when you see all the different types. Thanks for that, Nikita. I have a question for you, Alli. What would be the strategies for visualization if you have a mixed audience?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I like to pick one. So when I'm telling my audience or my client, like, let's pick a primary and a secondary. And because you know what they say, if you're talking to everybody, you're talking to nobody. So really, who is going to be the most impactful reader that you're trying to reach, and try to design for them first, and then think about your secondary audience, because you can see how a lot of the methods are pretty related, right, in the quadrant chart. And like, especially when you're on one side, or to the top section or the bottom section or the side, like a lot of times those strategies overlap a little bit. So think about where your primary audience is and where your secondary audience is, and see how you can mix the two, see if there's any overlapping strategies. And if you can, like I said, like have two graphics. So it really depends on the situation. Like if it's let's say you're doing a PowerPoint, lead with the graphic that's for your primary audience, and then maybe you can switch to your secondary graphic for your secondary audience. Or if it's a dashboard, you can have two different views, maybe two different tabs, like this is for this audience, this is for this audience. I always like to lean towards creating more graphics than fewer graphics when there's a mixed audience, but I know that that's not always the case. So usually I'm trying to lean into the primary audience first. And I know that's hard to decide a lot of the times, like, oh, I don't want to exclude anybody, but people, even if it's your secondary audience, they're still going to get something from it. So I say try to go towards the biggest impact first.
Thanks very much for that, Ali. Yeah, good question. Thanks a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So there's another question here, not directed at anyone specifically, so you can both give your input if you wish. So if you select a monochrome, I mean, I think it's more related to you, Nikita, in terms of the topic, but not specifically what you were kind of talking about, but let's see what you think. If you select a monochrome option for a chart, does it matter what color you choose? And do changes in tone show better for some colors than other colors? Do you have any thoughts on that one?
I would recommend just using a color blindness simulator to see, because even though you are using a monochrome chart or a monochrome chart in a dashboard, there would be multiple charts, and maybe the charts look very similar. The colors on the chart look very similar, and then it is very difficult to associate colors to a certain category. Suppose you have sales in one chart and profit in another, and the colors are very similar. If you use the color blindness simulator, someone might think that, they are the same thing. So just using a color blindness simulator would help here, I think.
Yeah, I suppose if it's more generally speaking and not related to color blindness, it's a good question. I mean, there's, in terms of a sequential color palette like that would often be if you have, say, data where there's no natural midpoint, and there's a few kind of out of the box ones, say, that you get with Tableau. And I've never even considered myself, are there more effective? It'll be interesting to think about it, but definitely from a colorblind perspective, I think that's a really good suggestion to kind of put it through the simulator and see, what the impact looks like. Thanks very much for that. Ali, then a question to you. What would you say kind of inspires you most in terms of some of those creative visualizations you showed us? Where do you get your inspiration from?
Yeah, inspiration is tough because I often find that the internet is a little bit too big to just get general inspiration. I use the internet when I already kind of have drilled down in my brief and I have an idea and like, okay, I know that I'm going to use like isometric design and it's going to be X, Y, and Z. Then I can specifically search for inspiration on the internet. But when I'm trying, I have a habit of gathering inspiration every day. And the way that I do that is I go to the library every week and then I make sure to pick out 3 books. And my first book is something where I'm trying to build a new skill. So I'm like looking at a how-to book or specifically a data viz book, or maybe something on color, or maybe even an autobiography or a biography list, like learning something new. And then the second book, I pick something that's very visually rich. So I go down the art section or the design section and I pick something that's going to be very visually stimulating. And then the third book, I get like just a wild card. So I just go down the aisles and just kind of see what jumps out at me this past week, I got my daughter actually got a comic book from the kids section, and I saw it and I was like, oh, I'm going to use that this week, because it was just it looked really interesting and different from what I would usually pick out myself. So every morning I spend about 10 minutes looking through each book, and there's no expectations. I'm just flipping through it, kind of like passively gathering inspiration. And I figured I've been doing this for like 6 months. And, if you're looking through 3 books a week, that's like 150 books that you've looked through and gathered inspiration from. And I don't have to put any expectation on it. I just am kind of perusing the book however I feel like. So I'm not like reading every single word unless I want to, but I'm kind of gathering. I have like a system for gathering these inspiration nuggets, because like I said, the internet's kind of too big. It's hard to just like randomly just start, gather information. So I have this kind of physical system, and it's really helped me gather inspiration for my work.
I love that. Thanks a million. It's like, what is this book you're talking of? We're just so used to the internet now. Like, I haven't been to a library in a long time. Well, every so often I'll go and get some books for my kids, but it's just such a good idea to kind of just have a look and open your mind. I love that. Thanks very much. Does anybody have any other questions? Just feel free to put them into the chat. We won't drag things on too long if we'll let our speakers take a break if there isn't anything else. Maybe we'll just close with one. Alli, do you see, or where do you see kind of people, where do you see challenges in the data visualization, and where people might go wrong, or, what are you seeing?
Well, I think the biggest thing that had an impact on making my graphics better is making sure that I had a really clear brief at the beginning of a project, and really thinking through this, quadrant of who my audience is, what information is going to be really important to them, and actually writing it out and writing success criteria. What do we want people to do after they've seen this graphic, and how are we going to know that happened? So someone is going to share the graphic on Twitter? Are we looking for shares? Are we looking for someone to click this link? Like, what exactly are we looking for someone to do, and how are we going to measure it? So adding success criteria to the graphics has really kind of changed my perspective on what I'm going to do. Because if you have a number that you're trying to reach, it really makes your design decisions really pointed, and it gives you a way to test it as well, to see, okay, is this graphic getting through to the person and making them click this link, or is it not? So having success criteria around your graphic has been really helpful for me, and creating a very comprehensive brief at the beginning of the project, not just like, hey, I got the data, let's just start, dragging stuff around in Tableau, which is great. But like, first thinking about your audience, what you're trying to achieve, what your success criteria are, that can really set you up and making your job a lot easier and making really effective graphics.
Makes sense. Thanks a million. I have to say that quadrant is something I think it's just going to help me frame, the requirements, and just think, just the different types of user, because there is so much competition out there. I know myself as a consumer, as I scroll through.
It's just hard to be like,
sometimes I think that looks kind of interesting. If I wasn't so tired, I might look into it a bit more. But and Nikita, that whole area of accessibility is just fascinating. It's one of those areas that I really want to learn more of. Color blindness is just kind of the start of it, isn't it? Like, there's just it's a big part of it, but there are just so many other things that I kind of want to learn more about as well myself. So it's a really important area. So I really appreciate both of you giving us your time, and so thanks very much again. And we'll be sharing the recording, and thanks for the questions. And hopefully see some of you at the next. We'll have one more meetup this quarter, so just keep an eye out and you should get notified. Okay, so have a good evening, everybody, or a good afternoon if you're based in the States. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll stop the recording now. Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hopefully the rain stops if you're in Ireland and you can have a good evening. Alli and Nikita, I don't know if you want to stay on for a moment or if you need to head off.
I can
Just
see
let people drop off now for a second. Am I sure I want to stop recording?